Hi everyone, welcome back to the next video on this month's theme of Asperger's and employment. And the topic you have chosen for this week is good jobs for people with Asperger's. So if you haven't already had your say by voting, you can check out this link and have your say there for next week. So in this video, we'll be breaking a few stereotypes. I'll be going through 2 essential qualities of what makes for an Aspie-friendly job. And then finally, I'll offer you my own personal tip on how to find the right job fit for you. Okay, so what are some of the stereotypes that already exist out there? I mean, think of what were you expecting to see when you clicked on the video that said good jobs for Asperger's. So some of the stereotypes are IT jobs, technical jobs, programming jobs, engineering, science-based, research-based, all of the kind of jobs where a person is usually working alone and usually a subject matter expert really getting deep into their own special interest, whatever that might be. And I guess the first stereotype I want to break is that what makes a job Aspie-friendly doesn't actually have anything to do with the field or the work itself. It's more the conditions that go around that work that make it either friendly or not. So I know very successful Aspies who work as lawyers and psychologists and musicians and artists and what else? I'm basically just going down the list of friends and thinking, what do they do? So what else? Personal trainers, politicians, social workers, basically any profession you can name, there will be people on the spectrum who do very, very well in those professions. So why do we even have these stereotypes, right? Where did they come from? Why do we have this idea that Aspies are best suited for these kind of socially isolating technical jobs? And I think that one of the reasons is this first essential quality of what makes for an Aspie-friendly job, which is that the job is performance-based. And what I mean by that is that the person knows exactly what they're supposed to do and they can be quite easily measured to say, yes, you're doing a good job. Yes, I'm doing a good job. So the reason that that is so important is because if the outcome and the product that you're making is more important than how you get there, then I can choose for myself how I get there. So my boss might ask me to do something and I will say, great. Can I do that in my own time, on the weekend, standing on my head with a blindfold? And my boss will say, sure, I don't really care how you do it, I just want you to get it done. And that allows for an incredible amount of flexibility for the Aspie to work things around and do things the way that I work best. It's a huge amount of motivation because all of a sudden work is actually fun, and the performance that I am able to get when I'm able to actually control those kind of environmental factors is huge. So I get the ego boost of doing a really, really good job and being sure that I'm doing a really, really good job. And finally, because I'm being so hyper-productive and because it's so easy to show how productive I'm being, I get the reward that I deserve. When I do a good job, I get rewarded. So I'll give you a counterexample of that. When I was working as an engineer, I was basically paid by the hour. I was on flexi time, I had really good conditions, but how the company knew that I was working was I was filling in a timesheet, clocking in, clocking out, and that was it. So what I would end up doing is I would end up coming in really early and I'd be in this zone of hyper-productivity and I would work flat out for 6 hours and I'd probably get like a week's worth of work done in those 6 hours. But the problem was that at the end of those 6 hours, my brain would be completely fried and I wouldn't really be able to do very much else useful for the rest of the day. So unfortunately, because of the system, I wasn't really allowed to go home after 6 hours. I had to stay for my 8 or 10 hours or more, depending on how much overtime the people around me were working. So what that meant was that when I came back into work the next day, I hadn't had enough time to recover, which meant that the whole next day, my brain was still fried. I was still in this unproductive mode where I was reasonably useless in terms of actually getting real results. So that was a big disadvantage. at work. Fortunately for me, the quality of my work was good enough that I managed to make sure that that wasn't a problem. But if I were in a situation where all I needed to do was get the job done, and it didn't matter if I took 5 days or 5 minutes, then I would be able to make sure that that flexibility happened and make sure that I could do things my way, and I don't have to explain to anyone else what I'm doing. All I need to do is prove to them that it works by showing them the results at the end. So that's the first quality. Having a performance-based job makes it a lot easier to ask for flexibility when you need it. So the second quality is to have a communication culture that is reasonably direct, honest, open to feedback, all of those kind of things. It's quite common for people on the spectrum to find the intricacies of complicated social interactions to be really difficult. So I am bound to, at some point, annoy someone or piss someone off or create some form of misunderstanding. That's kind of like a given whenever I interact with, humans. So if I'm in a workplace that has a culture that avoids conflict, that is really, really hard to come back when there is a misunderstanding, because I can't talk to anyone about it. So there are essentially two reasons why that culture is very important. First, it allows me more flexibility in terms of just being blunt when I might not be really sure how best to sugarcoat a message. I know the message needs to be delivered. I know sugarcoating it is really hard, but the message is really important, but I don't want to offend anyone. But in a culture where it's reasonably direct, I can just say it, and I know that the consequences won't be too severe for me. And the second point is the opposite. When I do something wrong, I need others to know that they don't need to sugarcoat the message. I just need the feedback. Because if you don't give me the feedback, I'm not going to know what I did wrong, and I'm just going to keep doing that thing and keep pissing people off. And if that goes on for too long, then there's lots of secondary social side effects of people not liking you, people unconsciously ostracizing you, talking to you less, and anyway, it snowballs out of control if I don't get the feedback and if I don't get the opportunity to try and stop doing whatever I'm doing that pisses people off, or at the very least, if it's something that I can't stop doing or something that I need to do, we need to have that conversation so that the issue is resolved one way or the other. Okay, so with all that in mind, my personal tip to help find a job fit that's right for you is don't think about this in terms of I'm an Aspie, therefore I have a particular profession. When looking for a job or a profession or any kind of career direction, you can basically go down two paths. You can go down the path of I'm really passionate about this subject. I am willing to work really, really, really hard because I am inherently internally motivated to do that. Or you could go the opposite approach of I am not particularly motivated to do this thing, but it comes so easily to me, right? I am so much better at this than most of the people in the population that I can do a very highly valued job for not really much of my internal resources and get paid well for doing it. And it doesn't need to be fancy. I was talking to an Aspie at a support group meeting once, and he said at his job, he is the guy who unpacks the crates. And he loves it because it's so easy and he can turn his mind off, and no one else at the company wants to do it because they think it's boring, but he thinks it's relaxing. So that was perfect for him because it was a job he was good at and could do really easily. And on the other side, I know people who have had almost no natural talent in a particular area, but because they are so internally motivated, they just keep working and keep trying. They try so much harder than everyone else that they end up doing really well. So my philosophy on the whole purpose of work is that we need to keep ourselves busy, express ourselves somehow, and be sustainable financially. So you don't necessarily need to do all of those things in the one job. It would be amazing if you could get a job doing something you're really good at in an area that you're really passionate about that also supports you financially. That would be amazing, but it doesn't always work out that way. So I know for myself, there are some things that I'm just really good at, which means that if I get some kind of performance-based job, I can spend a relatively small amount of my time doing something that comes very easily to me, that is very valuable to someone else, that I get paid quite well for. That means I'm financially sustainable, and then I've got the time and the energy to follow my passion and express myself and do all of those other things in a different time that's not my job. So that attitude has definitely served me well in making sure I'm financially stable. So anyway, I might leave it there for today. This is an absolutely massive topic, and I've really only offered just a couple of quick thoughts on that today. Thanks everyone who voted